Bezos' investigation finds the Saudis obtained his private data. Editors note the opinions in this article are the authors, as published by our content partner, and do not necessarily represent the views of MSN or Microsoft. For 40 years, I've advised at-risk public figures and government agencies on high-stakes security matters. My career has to understand where this story goes, some background is needed. In January, the National Enquirer published a special edition that revealed an intimate relationship Bezos was having. He asked me to. It was not the White House, it was not Saudi Arabia, a company lawyer said on national television, before telling us more it was a person that was known to both Bezos and Ms. Sanchez. In case even more, much was made about a recent front-page story in the Wall Street Journal, fingering Michael Sanchez as the Enquirer's source, but that information was first published almost 7 weeks ago by the Daily Beast, after multiple sources inside AMI told the Beast the exact same thing. Actual news in the Journal article was that its reporters were able to confirm what had been making it was about the affair, not the other way around. AMI has repeatedly on their Bezos story, but the Journal reports that when the Enquirer began conversations with Michael Sanchez, they had already been investigating whether Mr. Bezos and Ms. Sanchez were having an affair. Michael Sanchez, reality is complicated, and can't always be boiled down to a simple narrative like the brother did it, even when that brother is a person who certainly supplied some information to a supermarket tabloid, and even when that brother is an associate of Roger Stone and Carter Page. Though interesting, why did Amos people work so hard to identify a source, and insist to the Times and others that he was their sole source for everything? My best answer is contained in what happened next. AMI threatened to publish embarrassing photos of Jeff Bezos unless certain conditions were met. These were photos. An 8-page contract AMI sent for me and Bezos to sign would have required that I make a public statement, composed by them and then widely disseminated, saying that my investigation had concluded they hadn't relied upon any form of electronic eavesdropping or hacking in their news-gathering process. Note here that ID never publicly said anything about electronic eavesdropping or hacking. They wanted to be sure I couldn't. They also wanted me to say our investigation had concluded that their Bezos story was not instigated, dictated, or influenced in any manner by external forces, political or otherwise. External forces, indeed. An earlier set of their proposed terms included AMI making a statement affirming that it undertook no electronic eavesdropping in connection with its reporting and has no knowledge of such conduct. But now they wanted me to say that for them. The contract further held that if Bezos or I were ever in our lives to state, suggest, or allude to anything contrary to what AMI wanted said about electronic eavesdropping and hacking, then they could publish the embarrassing photos. I am writing this today because it's exactly what the Enquirer scheme was intended to prevent me from doing. Their contract, all things didn't work out as they hoped. When the terms for avoiding publication of personal photos were presented to Jeff Bezos, he responded immediately, "No thank you." Within hours, the issues Bezos raised in his Medium post have nothing whatsoever to do with Michael Sanchez, any more than revealing the name of a low-level Watergate burglar sheds light on the architects of the Watergate cover-up. Bezos was not expressing concerns about the Enquirer's original story. He was focused on, next, Bezos directed me to spend whatever is needed to learn who may have been complicit in the scheme, and why they did it. That investigation is now complete. As has, our investigators and several experts concluded with high confidence that the Saudis had access to Bezos' phone, and gained private information. As of today, we did not reach our conclusions lightly. The inquiry experts with whom we consulted confirmed New York Times reports on the Saudi capability to collect vast amounts of previously inaccessible data from smartphones in the air without leaving a trace, including phone calls, texts, emails, and confirmed that hacking was a key part of the Saudis that ultimately led to the killing of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Some Americans will be surprised to learn that the Saudi government has been very intent on harming Jeff Bezos since last October, when the Post began its relentless coverage of Khashoggi's murder. The Saudi campaign. Saudi Arabia attacks people in many ways, obviously, including through their that uses sophisticated technology and paid surrogates to create artificially trending hashtags. To give you an idea, in October, the Saudi government on Bezos and later me. They're multi-pronged. We as Saudis will never accept to be in the morning, only to buy products from Amazon and Suq.com by night. Strange that all through our weapon is to boycott because the owner of the newspaper is the same as their owner. Worshipper of money, will go bankrupt by the will of God at the hands of Saudi Arabia. The owner of Amazon and Suq is the owner of the Washington Post, is the spiteful Jew who insults us every day. Bezos is not Jewish, but you get the point. We studied the well-documented and close relationship between MBS and AMI chairman, David Pecker. That alliance the Associated Press reported that AMI sent of their laudatory magazine to the Saudi embassy 3 weeks before printing and distributing 200,000 issues. Despite APS, when AMI publicly insisted that nobody outside of their executives and editors had any influence on this publication or its content, I guess they meant other than Casey Grimes, the very same MB's intermediary Pecker had brought to the White House. I say that, my firm has done many investigations into Inquirer misconduct, including one that became the subject of a 60 Minutes way back Indiana in 1990. Before then, tabloids had been seen as almost funny publications, mixing celebrity gossip with space aliens and Elvis sightings. But when the Inquirer, though relatively benign at first, Al Gore's diet is making him stupid, the Trump/Pecker relationship has metastasized in effect, of the Trump presidential campaign and presidency, as the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York laid out in its case against Michael Cohen, who has pleaded guilty. The U.S. Attorney, I would be wrong to imply that the Inquirer hasn't evolved since the 90s, because it has. The tabloid and as for the Saudi side of the equation, not only does the kingdom have a close alliance with AMI, which owns the Inquirer, US Weekly, The Star, Globe, Radar Online, and many other publications, but the AN partnerships involving Rolling Stone, Variety, Deadline, The Robb Report, and National Geographic, among others. Unlike these publications, it's clear that MBS considers the Washington Post to be a major enemy. Saudi Arabia.
Raindrop, drop top, smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.